Welcome to Real Talk, Indiana's premier talk show on real estate investing, where we talk each week about investing your money right here in Central Indiana. The tips, tricks, do's, and don'ts brought to you by CIREIA, Central Indiana's oldest and largest real estate investing association. Hello there. My name is Vicki Perry, and I'm the Executive Director of CIREIA. We have over 600 members, all active in or learning how to be active in real estate here in the Indiana market. This radio show is available on FM 95.9, AM 950, podcast on YouTube, and www.cireia.org. Join us each week as we talk about how you can make your money more active with better returns and help the community that you live in with real estate done the right way. Now, on with the show.
And this is Real Talk, the only real estate investing radio show where active investors discuss real estate investing done the right way, every Saturday and Sunday from noon till 1 p.m. I'm Ron Watson, president of the board of directors of CIREIA, and your host today. We're going to be discussing some of the headlines that are affecting the real estate investing world, and you can check out how to contact each of our guests on our website at cireia.org and find out how to reference the materials we're going to be talking about. Joining me today are three of the top investors in real estate in Central Indiana. First, we have Dave Short with Century 21 Sheets. Dave's an investor, realtor, coach, mentor, and one of the most sought-after rehabbers in Central Indiana. Welcome again, Dave.
Great to be here.
Also here is Sterling Davis, owner of Ethosity Property Management, entrepreneur, realtor, and active on the board of directors for CIREIA as well. Hello, Sterling.
Hello.
And joining us again is Brian Snyder, Sales and Marketing Manager for Simple Wholesaling, one of the top wholesalers in the state of Indiana as well. Thanks again for joining us, Brian.
Welcome, everyone.
So I appreciate everybody being here today. I think the last couple of shows we started direction of talking about some interesting and exciting things that are happening in real estate and real estate investing in Central Indiana. And I wanted to hit a couple of those headlines again today and talk about some of these particular stories that we've seen in more detail and get perspectives from each of you. So let's start with, I'm going to read these headlines and we're going to dig into one of them after I'm done. So just to give you a teaser, some of the things I'm looking at here: projects aim to build skilled trade forces. So that's going to be an interesting topic. There's a developer spending $15 million to build senior villas on 86th Street, actually near my neighborhood. So I'm very familiar with that particular item. And I wanted to start with this. And this is an investor's guide to grading Indianapolis neighborhoods. And I know each of you guys are out there on a regular basis, on a daily basis, looking at all of these neighborhoods. So your perspectives on this information, I think, will be very interesting. This is published by Sterling White from biggerpockets.com.
Great first name. Great man.
Coincidentally. And it talks about the neighborhoods, and this particular one is the Indianapolis neighborhoods, and it rates them from A classes to all the way down to D classes now. And this is really from a real estate investor's perspective. So maybe we can start with Dave and get your thoughts. Some of the neighborhoods here listed on the A class side, and maybe you could explain from your side of it why you think this may or may not be true, are some areas: Carmel, Fisher, Zionsville, Meridian Hills. Does that make sense to you? I mean, is this the kind of thing that you look at when you start looking at where to buy and invest properties?
Well, these neighborhoods, I wished everybody in the audience could have a copy of this article, because it is a great article that appeared in Bigger Pockets concerning Indianapolis. But the A neighborhoods, I would typically agree with, and it's Carmel, Fisher, Zionsville, Meridian Hills, Westfield, Noblesville, Avon, and Greenwood, and probably is turn over the other guys, but the thing that glares at me the most in regards to these particular neighborhoods are neighborhoods we can't hardly find flips in.
Yeah.
And also the median income is sky high compared to even the B class neighborhoods.
Yeah, that's interesting. You know, they sound like really, really good places if you look at the way that this is put together to be a real estate investor, but it's not necessarily easy because the inventory there is not as plentiful as in some other areas of the city.
It is.
So, Sterling, and so let's talk about some of the B class listed in this report. Things like Brownsburg, New Palestine, Whiteland, Claremont, etc. What do you think about? And Broad Ripple's actually listed in here as well. What do you think about how they've classified this, and maybe why these properties or these areas might be falling into that category?
Yeah. I think he's done a really great job of being able to look at the median income and then start looking at the valuation of why he did what he did, right? Like looking at the rental amounts. On my side, when I start looking at this as a landlord, Brownsburg, Southport, Greenwood, and it is a different animal when it comes to management than you start talking about Irvington, Bates Hendricks, Fountain Square, more of like the suburban areas of the Brownsburg, and then we have Bates Hendricks more in the city, right? So for me, it's kind of funny looking at, both of those things can be B, but they're totally different when you start talking about demographics and people and the people that's seeking after it. I think it's really helpful, though, because I have rental properties in both of these areas, but the approaches are completely different, though, when it comes down to like where Irvington, Fountain Square, we might be doing like flips and holds and more burrs and stuff. Brownsburg is a really tricky one when it comes down to holding real estate, where it's more of a cash flow situation because the entry fee is sometimes higher than what it, I don't know, the opinion might say that it's sometimes higher than what the rule is when it comes to the rental to sell price valuation.
Yeah, that makes sense. And Brian, I know you guys are out there wholesaling properties, and I was curious about one particular area here that's listed in the B class, which is Fountain Square, and we talk about that on a regular basis in this show. But in this, there's a note down here that says you can find houses valued at $50,000 right next to a new one for $350,000. So it seems to me that might mean it's a tricky place to for a new investor to kind of get involved. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. It is. And it's Fountain Square is just a hot area. If anybody that's on Bigger Pockets, anybody that's out there nationally, if they're talking about investing in Indianapolis, they've heard of Fountain Square and they've heard of Bates Hendricks. Those areas down in there. They've been really hot for about 3 years now. But when we're taking a look at a map like this, and they kind of classified, and I love what Sterling did with this with this article, because this is all language that we use in the wholesaling business all the time. Because when I'm talking to investors, when I'm talking to people that are especially outside of the state, investors from California or Hawaii or wherever, I need to be able to kind of talk to them of like, hey, this is what I consider a B-class neighborhood, a C-class neighborhood. So kind of the way he broke this down makes a lot of sense. But there are neighborhoods such as Fountain Square, which is kind of labeled as a B-class neighborhood, where there are definitely like streets around Fountain Square that are not, B-class neighborhoods, what I consider. So Indianapolis is kind of tricky. I always just, kind of talking to investors, I always say, man, it's kind of like Swiss cheese, where you really have just, a really nice area here, but then like there's just a pocket right beside it that's, not something I want my wife to walk down at night. So being able to break down, the classes and stuff is a great system, and it's a great way to look at. But hopefully you're not just looking at like, oh yes, this whole area is awesome, I'm going to invest everything here, because you do need to kind of look at it street by street as well.
Yeah.
So I got a question for Dave. So if I'm a new investor and I'm looking at something like this, and I'm curious about where do I even begin to look, because there's Indianapolis area is a big area. Would I start in a B or a C class neighborhood? I mean, where it might make the most sense for somebody that's just trying to get their feet wet and get started somewhere?
Well, it's a great question, and I think we can start. I would answer that question by starting with the D-class neighborhoods. The Hallville, Martindale, Brightwood, Brookside Park, Grace Tuxedo, Mars Hill. Those are D neighborhoods. Those is, as an experienced flipper, I would call those pioneer areas for people.
I like that word.
And it's they're one of the first ones in. Now, what we see, and Brian can address this a lot better than I, is that the wholesalers tend to get better looking values in these neighborhoods where they send out a property. It might be $25,000 or $30,000, which gives a lot of people an entry level. where it's a lot more work to get to the profit. I mean, we see people getting really good profits on flips in these kinds of neighborhoods because their price of entry is so low compared to Fountain Square was that neighborhood 4 years ago, for instance, where everybody, we could look at stuff at 35, or first one I bought in Bates Hendricks was $23,000.
Yeah, I mean, wholesaling aspect, like you're saying, like 3 years ago, we were buying stuff in Fountain Square for, $10,000-$15,000. Those same exact houses would sell for $60,000 today. So
where you finding 60?
Huh.
Yeah,
that's even the
60.
Yeah.
So that's interesting, because I'm curious. What I was thinking of when I was looking at this was, does a neighborhood move from up to a class and down to a class? I mean, and when does that happen? Is it based upon, when the opportunities are drying up, or maybe the market's priced them too high, or what happens there?
Well, what I see is, what my experience has been is, you can't just have, and people have making this mistake prior, is like, you can't just have houses been renovated and think that that's going to be the driving force. You have to have commerce, basically. You have to have commercial commerce, things that are drivers. One of the indicators for me, I always say, is like when a coffee shop goes to the hood. Like, you know what I mean? Like, when you start having coffee shops, like,
that's a good indicator.
Yeah, that's a good indicator.
Just wait for Starbucks to show up.
Exactly.
And then go like crazy.
Like, I mean, I had houses, I remember, where when you start looking at it, it's like, man, what they like hipsters and things like that is like, no, they was just getting coffee at the gas station. Now they're like, no, I want a premium roast coffee and I want a latte.
And I think that's one of the things that's definitely helping Indianapolis out, is that, the real estate market is so great here, but also we are a great local market to where there are so many, of the local coffee shops that are going in, the local restaurants. So you look at an area like, Broad Ripple, where we have this, the Sobro area now, South Broad Ripple, where there's just all these little boutiques and just nice little shops and stuff like that. And that's bringing a lot of people in to where, in that South Broad Ripple area, there are those shops that are coming in, like Sterling's saying, but now there's, there are a lot of houses around there are all 2-bedroom, 1-bath. Yeah. Well, now they're basically, everybody's buying those up and they're flipping them. They're just adding another story on top to make it, a 3 or 4 bedroom and going on from there. So,
well, the other thing too is, and all of these areas tend to drive towards millennial buyers.
Yeah.
And the millennial buyer is what I call a very forgiving buyer. My generation won't buy a $400,000 house next to a house that should probably be demoed. A millennial will forgive that and buy the house for the neighborhood and the lifestyle that they desire. So it lets these areas tend to continually improved on a monthly basis.
That's a great point. When we start looking at D class, that was my first rental property, was in a D class area, and I got a lot of my stripes from there. Right, when previous episodes I talk about like the renter center management philosophy, where we just started giving people 4 walls, painted, new carpet or new flooring. And then we started renting everything back to them. That's where I kind of came up with that model, because I just had so many leaks in my buckets where people were breaking screen doors, they were breaking garbage disposals and things, and I was like, man, I can't make, my net at this point is $150. So if I have to fix a garbage disposal at $150 every month or something like that, I'm not going to make money. So in these D-class areas can be value for you if you're a mature investor, but you have to understand what you're getting yourself into.
That's what, Dave, I kind of wanted to, going off of what Sterling was saying there, I wanted to ask you, Dave, like, if you are trying to do a flip in one of these neighborhoods, like, the Martindale Brightwood area, if you're trying to do a flip there, are you basically, buying it at a really good price and you're buying it for like, $20,000, somewhere around there, and you're trying to flip it? Are you basically just kind of putting, what kind of upgrades are you doing to it? Is it like kind of just like rental upgrades and trying to sell it as a turnkey? Or
if when I go into, this is me as a person that does a lot of flips, is when I go into a D neighborhood, my strategy is probably going to be in and out very quickly and recognize value that somebody that can manage a full project. I mean, I can see the investors going in this neighborhood where they can be on the job every day and they can manage it, they can keep their costs down, and they make it. So my entry into these neighborhoods will probably be a wholesale or what we call a retail or a hotel type, where I do some of the hard work. We're doing one now in a neighborhood similar, and we're doing a perception of $25,000 worth of foundation work on this house that we're paying $10,000 or $11,000. So I'm looking at that. I'm making a profit on my foundation work and giving a new investor an opportunity to finish a house under the criteria that they can actually get a house completed and make a fair profit. So we look at these houses, we look at these D neighborhoods totally different, where we go into our big flips in these A neighborhoods and B neighborhoods, because we know from a flipper standpoint it's hard to over improve the house. We'll always get our value back when we put it back in.
Yeah, and I think to that point, we've done a couple of those lately, and the retail market is still pretty good here. So if you do that, you can easily put it on like the retail market, and like we've sold several of them in the last couple weeks, for close to ask, and we've had pretty good margin in that.
Well, you can. I've found in a lot of these kinds of areas, which are really good areas for newer people, flippers to work in, is that you can, we'll sell anything out that we own if we can recover anywhere from 20 to 50% of our profit, right, if we take it to a full completion on a rehab. And so we get a lot of those opportunities, and it still leaves a lot of room for an investor or a homeowner to move into a house in the neighborhood that they want and get value.
Yeah, I think it also brings in a good opportunity for people to, if you're in a situation where you can kind of afford it and you have the money to do it, where you can buy and kind of do a couple houses like this and actually finance it, use seller financing to sell it on a land contract or whatever you need to do to be able to kind of bring in some of that revenue for yourself as well, a little bit more passive.
That's a great point. Like my first couple homes, I have one on Villa right now, but it's on the north side of Raymond Street, right? And when I bought this house for $20,000, this was 6 years ago, I think, on land contract. And now I was looking at the value the other day. Now it's at like 65 or 70,000. I was like, man, this was not that bad of an investment after all. It's a little old lady that's been living there for $750 in rent. I think I've made my money.
I wanted to ask, somebody mentioned, I think Dave mentioned, or maybe Sterling, the idea of the millennial buyers. Is that really what's driving these C-class, D-class, B-class neighborhoods, and where that investment dollars make sense? I mean, is it those buyers that we're talking about?
I think they're driving for sure they're driving almost all the D neighborhoods, and it's because
especially for the gentrification, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, and so no, they're definitely driving those neighborhoods, and the higher they get, I mean, the more, if it gets to a B and A neighborhood, our buyers are not really what I would put in the millennial category. Some of them are. Right. Some of these areas that you'll see is, I think he's grouped a lot of areas. For instance, he has Speedway as a C neighborhood. Well, Speedway, Indiana is a pretty solid, in my mind, B area. Broad Ripple, for instance, he has, it appears he's encompassed Meridian Kessler with Broad Ripple. Mm-hmm. So, that's two different areas, and some of them is an A and some of them is a B, and, Broad Ripple still has the perception of getting pretty far south, and Broad Ripple is still a C neighborhood to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you start seeing the gentrification moving in, it's that new millennial. It's that millennial, got a new job, wants to be close to the city, might not have the revenue to be in the best of a or B neighborhood, so they might settle for a C. Like I have a friend that lives in Little Flower, but he lives in a really good street on Linwood that makes it doesn't feel unsecure, like, but he was able to get there for $120, and he's still 5 minutes away from downtown.
Well, I think that makes sense, and it's interesting how the millennials, and we've talked a little bit about this in other segments and other shows, and how you focus differently your business model based upon those types of buyers. We're going to take a quick break here and come back to dig into this in more detail and a couple of these other headlines and stories that we've been talking about right after this message.
Are you looking for a new place for lunch or dinner, or a fun place to hold your next company party? Check out Trader's Mill Grill and Bar. Awesome, friendly staff, fabulous food made from scratch, full bar and daily drink specials. Make it an evening with more than 20 screens to get your favorite games, including Golden Tee. Also has 3 pool tables. You can find their menu and hours at tradermill.com. Check out Trader's Mill Grill and Bar located at 5650 West 86th Street, Indianapolis, Indiana.
Do you have a house that you want to sell, but you don't want to fix it up before you sell it? Or you need the cash quickly? Or you just inherited Aunt Susie's house and don't know what to do with it? That's what Dave Short does. He buys houses so you can get on with your life. He pays cash, closes quickly, and buys in all central Indiana. For details, call Dave at 317-590-4499 or email Dave at bshort@c21sheets.com. That's spelled C21SCHEETZ.com.
And welcome back to Real Talk. I'm Ron Watson, president of the board of directors of CIREIA, and your host today. Joining me is Dave Short with Century 21 Sheets, Sterling Davis, owner of Athosity Property Management, and Brian Snyder, sales and marketing manager for Simple Wholesaling. And before the break, we were talking about this interesting article that Sterling White produced for BiggerPockets.com that graded the Indianapolis neighborhoods A, B, C, D, and so on. And I thought maybe we'd start out, Brian, with a little bit of a description about how they determine what an A class is and a B class and so on.
Yeah, so we're kind of talking about the classes here. A, B, C, and D is kind of what we're talking about here. And your A class neighborhoods are going to be those ones that basically all the single family homes are $200,000 and up. The schools are outstanding. There's not. Mostly all single-family homes, not too many rental homes. So from an investor standpoint, your returns are going to be a little bit lower because the price of the homes are kind of valued up there, a lot higher. When you get into a B-class neighborhood, there's going to be a little bit more renters in there, a little bit more occupied properties. For the most part, you're going to have some blue-collar workers in there as well. You're going to have rent, your rent's going to be in between $800 and then $1,000, somewhere around there, usually in your B class neighborhoods. Then you get into C class neighborhoods, a lot more blue collar, a lot more where it's just basically half and half of single family homes, and then the other half are occupied properties and renters. Usually your rents are going to be in between $600 to $800. And then you have your D-class neighborhoods, which are a little bit rougher, a lot more, you're going to see a lot more vacant properties sitting there. And then you have, your rents are usually going to be in between, $450, $700, somewhere around there. So a lot more just kind of, like I said, just a little bit rougher.
One of the things, Brian, that you talked about in the A neighborhoods, for instance, and I think a lot of investors who want to potentially defer gains on houses, these houses have much better appreciation. Mm-hmm. So if you have a $200,000 house in Fishers or Carmel that you felt maybe like you've overpaid a lot because of the demand in the neighborhood, and you only have $200 a month positive cash flow, which isn't a lot on a $200,000 house, but if that house goes up 3% a year, which I think is very sustainable for the future for these kind of neighborhoods, then that means that's going up $6,000 a year, which is almost $500 a month, adding on tax deferred into a $200 a month gain. So that house may be giving you a $700 a month positive cash flow just deferred.
Yeah, and even
and that makes those neighborhoods really good for passive investors who don't want a lot of grief.
Right, and that's the thing too, is with those, even though your return might not look like it's as great as some of the the B and C neighborhoods as far as rent goes, you're going to have a higher quality tenant in there. Usually they're going to usually want to stay a little bit longer, so that's definitely a great part of that as well.
No, I literally just had this conversation with an investor. He was looking at a D neighborhood, and what he was telling me, I thought that he might have been more prepared to invest in a B neighborhood, and I was making an analogy of in the D neighborhood he could have bought 2 houses for $50,000, that's $100,000, or he can buy in the B neighborhood 1 house for $100,000. But the difference is for $500 in rent, or one house for $1,000 in rent. And kind of to your point, it's not apples to apples if you're not looking at the vacancy, you're not looking at deferred maintenance, you're not looking at all these things that encompasses a real portfolio when you start talking over the lifespan of holding it.
Yeah, I think a big part of this is like, where you're talking about, it all comes down to understanding what you want to do as an investor and understanding what you are comfortable with. You see, just educating yourself on knowing what kind of neighborhood you're in, what kind of return you're going to get. A lot of times it's so easy to see investors just kind of jump into a new market like Indianapolis and just kind of be like, oh, well, I heard somebody say this was a good area, I'm going to jump in here, I'm going to do this. But you really have to understand what strategy you want to use. Because if you're, a young guy, you're a hustler, you like to get out there, maybe you can handle, bringing 10 properties in and kind of having that turnaround and you're doing it on your own and, kind of look for just improving those. Or maybe you just, you want to be a little bit more passive, like, hey, I'll just take 2 properties in a nice neighborhood and kind of sit back and let it work for itself.
That's a really interesting points you guys are bringing up, because it's really about what your goals are, right, as an investor, and to educate yourself, like Brian said, about the possibilities and what's involved. If I get into a neighborhood like Dave was talking about, maybe you have less day-to-day hassle and effort that you have to make. It's more of a passive investment, but it's a longer-term gain for you versus the gentleman you just described. He's out there. He's hungry, right? He doesn't mind dealing with the tenants and maybe doing a little bit of the work on the houses himself or whatever, and he's going to get a different type of return. So it really does depend on. I think what CIREIA does really well, and to speak to this, is help educate people along those lines, right? Is to expose people to all the different possibilities and the combinations and permutations of things that you can get into, and what help you kind of figure out what makes sense for your appetite for investing, and in fact figure out what your appetite is. Because a lot of people say, well, I want to be a real estate investor, but gosh, and I see different versions of that in this room, and there's 10 more versions of it out there. I mean, it just depends on what you want to accomplish.
One of the things too, and I can give a great example of this is that I had a pretty astute investor who was coming out of a large family farm, and she wanted to defer taxes, so she used a 1031 exchange, and she went into Fisher's and bought 10 houses, and I thought she was nuts because she wasn't getting the cash flow. Well, what's happened in these 4 years that she's done that, she's got modest cash flow on these properties, but all of them have went up $30,000.
That's huge.
So she's made 30% on her money and accepting lower returns today. So she's in a substantially better place than the average person in the marketplace. And because of how my mind's geared, I didn't think she was making that good a deal.
Right.
Yeah.
She did.
I think that's the thing that when I look at this, I think of what are the pitfalls? Like, what is just looking at this as a new investor and saying, because what's sometimes happened, we all probably have faced this person. They're like, well, somebody told me to invest on Bigger Pockets in Fountain Square. I'm going to invest in Fountain Square. Like Brian said, Indy is a metropolitan area, so it's a block by block situation. And Dave, I heard stories that Dave has told about Irvington. I'm like, yeah, I think I'm good. I don't think I'm ready for those issues, right? So if I just start taking this as a roadmap alone, what do you guys feel would be the pros and cons of it, I guess?
So you're talking about in terms of if I'm a B class neighborhood, what are the pros and cons? What do you think, Brian? Some ideas. Let's just start with the B's. I think the A's are a little different animal, but if you're a new investor, maybe you're looking at B's or C's. And what are some of the pros and cons of getting involved in those kinds of neighborhoods? Yeah,
I'd say right now in Indianapolis, kind of one of the big advantages of investing in that B class neighborhood is that it is up and coming, where the city and just investors and just people in general have put a lot back into it. So there's a lot of exciting things happening in those neighborhoods right now. So one of the big things with investors and just or even just if you're renting something, you want to find good clientele to be good tenants. Walkability is that big thing. So right now, and I see a lot of these B class neighborhoods that they have on here, the Irvington, the Bates Hendricks, Fountain Square, Broad Ripple, stuff like that. There's a ton of walkability going on right now where you can, whether you're renting, living, flipping, whatever, you can walk out the door and go grab a drink, go grab a cup of coffee, go have a good, good something to eat. So I think that's a big advantage right now of where I kind of see kind of that classification, the difference between some of them is in the B-class neighborhoods, there's a lot of exciting things going on right now.
Yeah. So I have a question that's along those lines. And Sterling mentioned this earlier, which, if you see a coffee shop, that's a good indicator of, things are going in the right direction, maybe from an investor standpoint. But that's always been my challenge is how do you know when the timing is good in these neighborhoods, right? So, how do you kind of figure that out? Do you use different criteria? Everybody, maybe they do, but Dave, what do you look for when you say, okay, the timing is good for this neighborhood?
Well, I think I see enough renovation going on in the neighborhoods that's not what I look for really close. If renovations is going on in a D neighborhood, I want to make sure there's not a lot of subsidies involved because that tends to inflate or inflate the pricing when people are not really paying that.
That's a great point. Oh my God!
And so real investors is what you're looking for.
Real investors, yeah. And what I've done is I've seen investors and I've talked with them who have built quote subsidized housing, and I'm not talking about old what we think about as old subsidized. These are really, really nice houses. And entry-level buyers are getting really nice breaks to go into these houses. But yet if a flipper or a new builder builds one right next to this house, he can't compete or we can't find the buyer that it's at $250,000 when the house next door is sold for that on a subsidized situation.
So it's some artificial
it's artificial
thing that have been
inflation,
introduced
into
the
the marketplace. So you can go in those neighborhoods, but you just have to be at a much lower price point than you think that the comps say. The comps say it's this amount of money. Well, the comps really don't say it's that amount of money if you take all the factors in consideration.
Yeah, I feel like that is. So we talked about that on break. It was a house that was built at $200,000, but the subsidies got it at $100,000. So they were trying to say that the value was $200,000, and I was like, man, that doesn't seem sustainable. And it's a block of those.
Well, I think, and so we're gonna take another break here in just a second. And what Dave just talked about is really fascinating. It's probably something we could teach a whole course about. Is how do you dig into the details of knowing that this was an inflated or a artificially investment process going on there, and that's going to affect the pricing and all that. But I want to take a quick break here, and we're going to get back into some more details about this and some of the other articles right after this. Are you looking for a career change or a life change? That is the mission behind Simple Wholesaling, the leading provider of discounted properties in Indianapolis. Simple Wholesaling is all about making the process simple for buyers of properties, sellers of properties, and members of the Central Indiana community who want to generate wealth, free up time, and then help you use that wealth and freedom to make a difference in the world. Check them out at www.simplewholesaling.com or email Brian@simplewholesaling.com or call 317-494-7211.
Is this you? You've heard about landlording and you love the idea of a steady stream of income from real estate, but you're concerned about tackling the 2 a.m. calls and worrying about renters who don't pay their rent on time? That's where the pros at Ethosity Property Management take the hassle out of investing for you. They handle the toilets and tenants for over 300 local rentals and are happy to help you with yours. Call Sterling at 888-212-3764 or check out www.ethosity, that's ETHOSITYPM.com.
Insurance companies say they're going to be there for you when life happens, but the truth is things can get pretty complicated fast when it comes to a personal injury accident. The steps you take after an unexpected crash are crucial. You need help every step of the way. Hey Andy, this is Dave Ramsey. I've been talking about the Randy 7-ish difference for several years now. For 34 years, Randy has helped thousands of people through their worst circumstances. Randy stands as a shield in between you and the insurance company. So even if you've started conversations with the insurance company after an injury accident, talk to Randy 7-ish to make sure you're not leaving money on the table. If you or someone you know has an injury accident, whether you're a pedestrian, passenger, driver, or rider, talk to Randy 7-ish first. Call 317-636-7777 for a no-obligation consultation. 7-ish Law, fierce protectors of the injured. 317-636-7777 or 7ishlaw.com.
And welcome back to Real Talk. My name is Ron Watson. I'm the president of the board of directors of CIREIA. And joining us on the panel today is Dave Short with Century 21 Sheets, Sterling Davis, owner of Authenticity Property Management, and Brian Snyder from Simple Wholesaling. And we've been talking a lot about the segmentation of investment properties in the Indianapolis area based on the report that we saw from Sterling White and BiggerPockets.com. And I know, Dave, we were talking about, for example, B-class opportunities and how you might go about segregating those. Can you give into us a little bit more detail about that?
Well, the B-class neighborhood, just quickly going over them, Fountain Square, Irvington, Bates Hendricks is all Broad Ripple's all B-class. Really much harder to find flips in those neighborhoods. But we also have Brownsburg, New Powell, Plainfield, and Whiteland. Well, those areas, I get a lot of opportunities in those kinds of areas, and they're just a little bit out of my not expertise, but driving around, getting to that kind of stuff. But all of these areas have entry-level housing that hasn't been touched for years. So I think they can be really great flip opportunities that you don't see in the Irvingtons, in the other areas. It has good schools, which is what we want. They have really strong median income, which is what we really want for flipping. So you can dig into these neighborhoods and find 900,000 square foot houses that maybe can be bought for $50,000, $60,000, and with rehab money put to them, they'll be $120,000 houses, and you won't have any issues selling them to the people that want to live there. $120,000 house today with 3.5% down as a minimum buy, the payment's $850 a month, and it's a great deal for somebody on an entry level. And these areas tend to attract entry level buyers, and they're not buying what I call their second home first.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah, I have one client actually that I think we've done 3 deals with him just this year in Claremont, and he's done really, really well on them. Just going in and fixing it up and reselling it
because nobody's doing those neighborhoods.
Exactly. So there is a really opportunity for some of those neighborhoods to. You get that return on investment and stuff, and it's kind of like the Carmel, the Fishers. They're kind of like buzzwords a little bit, where that's kind of where everybody's thinking everybody wants to be. But realistically, like you said, Dave, there's some great opportunities. There's markets as well.
So that's I'm not to cut you off, Sterling. I'm sorry. It just made me think. We talked about timing again before the break, and that sounds to me like a timing issue, right? It's like this. You believe there's some really good opportunities there, Dave, and people aren't really digging into that as much as they are in some of the other areas we've talked about. And why is that? I mean, what's going on
Well, it's
there?
like, I use we tend to try to identify areas where we're not having to compete against everybody in the world to get a house. And I figured, okay, why haven't I looked at Fortville?
Right.
So I'm thinking, that's Sunday. This is like Saturday, Sunday. I'm out driving Fortville. I missed the boat. They've already come and got all the houses. We don't see anything coming through Fortville anymore, because it was one of those recognized areas by some pretty astute people that lived around there. Plainfield's like that today, I think. There's great opportunities there. Whiteland, there's great opportunities there. Brownsburg, there's great opportunities there. So, because we just think of newer construction and that kind of thing going on in Brownsburg, and they all have entry-level housing that hasn't been touched for years.
Oh yeah, we have several duplexes in Brownsburg. We almost have a colony of duplexes that are older, but it's not what you think of Brownsburg, right? Like, it's not the newer homes, and I think that's what you have to be kind of aware of in those things. That's why you see so many people like that Mapleton Fall Creek area is like. That 38th Street is scary, right? It's kind of rough. But, like, if you go north or you go south of there, it's some opportunities where some houses are, like, $500,000 south of there. I was riding through there the other day. I'm like, man, where do these houses come from? And they've been there for years, right? Like,
And that's the thing too. It's all about like the stigma too of like if you're living in Indianapolis, you hear 38th Street, like oh no, stay away. But like honestly, there's some people that are doing some pretty cool things around there right now. And some.
Well, it's a perfect example. At the last sheriff's sale, I was at a house and I was very active on a house at 3500 on Central Avenue. And I'm thinking, you know, I'm pretty smart here. I'm going to be able to snag this house and beat the competition. And then all of a sudden I start bidding, and I see who's bidding against me, and I said, uh-oh, they've already discovered that this is a great neighborhood. And they were willing to pay more than me because I hadn't done proper research in that neighborhood yet.
No, I think that's the thing, is like really having. I see a lot of people that want to get into the business of like wholesaling or become a real estate agent, and this is one of the things I talk to my team about constantly. I'm like, we were in a team meeting the other day, and I was like, hey, what are the top 5 questions that everyone asks you as an investor? And it's like, number 1, what area should I invest in? And I was like, I went around the room, I'm like, what area should they invest in? And they're like, up. I'm like, that is not good enough. Like, you should know what those, and be able to answer these people's questions, but it takes you being involved. It takes you being a part of CIREIA. It takes you being investing yourself to learn these things. You can't just half but do it and think that you're going to make money off of it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you can't just make the money without doing the research.
And that gets back to kind of, you know, that thing too of like my follow-up question, because I have investors all the time like, oh, where do I need to invest in? And my follow-up question is always, what do you want to do? Like, what do you want? You know, what do you want your return to be? What kind of properties do you want to work with? What are you okay with on rehab wise and stuff like that? So once they are able to know that, it's being able to, you know, have your team go out there and basically like, yes, you need to be here, you need to go here. So, you know, articles like this one that Sterling did here is great. So to just help out with that reference point.
Yeah,
and I think that, you know, to me, I always come back to that timing issue. I know that when I first started buying properties for to become a landlord, it was the reason I didn't do it wasn't because there wasn't good opportunities. It was just I wasn't educated. I didn't really know where to start. I didn't know where to look. And once I actually did become a member of CIREIA many years ago, and that helped me get some information and some ideas and a good place to start. So I am plugging this organization, of course, which I'm happy to be president of that. But
I'm happy to be the vice president of that place.
Coincidentally, that's working. But the point is, I mean, it's about that education and learning, and because I think a lot of people like me at that point I wanted to get involved in some way, but I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know where to start, and I was reticent, and the reticence cost me money because I missed out on opportunities, you know, and so this kind of discussion helps people clarify and gives them some pathway and some direction on maybe what to do next.
Yeah, because I mean, we all probably deal with a lot of out-of-state, out-of-country investors, and being able to narrow down, like, and be more specific for them, and kind of what, to Brian's point, it's like, all right, but what is your goal? Like, I know you heard Fountain Square and you saw on HGTV that 2 Chicks and Hammers here, but that is not necessarily meeting your expectation and your goal. So I think you have to have a plan. Like, you have to, and then you have to stick to your plan. Like, you can't just fall in love with the idea of what you see on TV, like, you know, so because there's so many cool ideas out there, and as an entrepreneur myself, I'm the number one person that I will get distracted. I'm like, oh, Bert, oh, that one's good. Oh, maybe I should do this. So I think you do have to make sure you get a plan, because you go to CIREIA and you hear a speaker talking about storage units or something like that, you could easily be like, I'm doing storage units tomorrow. What happened to flipping that?
That was last week. Now I'm doing something else. All right, so I wanted to get back to this report just one minute, because I'm curious about, and we've hit on some of these areas, but like in the D-class neighborhoods, does that mean I should stay away from those altogether, or does it mean, depending upon, like Brian was saying, what my goals are, they might be really good opportunities for me, or like what Dave said, this might be good options for me from a lower risk standpoint, and because there's less money involved. I mean, if you were going to recommend somebody to start and you knew kind of what their goals were, would you point them in that direction maybe?
You know, I would point them there again. It's how much capital are they working with? What's their tolerance for risk? You know, what's their long-term goals? Is this a turnkey? Is this a rental? So I would do that, and then I would also say to any of the newbies that want to do these kind of neighborhoods, let us look at your transaction. Let us look at your deal. You know, we can pick from enough. We get a lot of newbie investors that, you know, are hesitant to, like, even if they have a transaction, give out an address. And I said, look, if you're in an organization here, if you can't share that you're probably not going to get accurate information. We're not going to, nobody steals your deal, so to speak. So you just need to get all the information, and all of these areas are good opportunities at some price point, at some level. Mm-hmm. So I don't discourage people going from, the up-and-coming area now, or it's not up-and-coming yet, but it will be, the Twin Air. There's going to be a lot of stuff going on there. I think they're clearing ground that, I looked at yesterday, they're clearing the old International Harvester facility on Brookville Road and Ritter. Well, you know what? Something's going in there probably. I don't know what yet, but there's something on it that will push that area up. Oh, yeah. And there's going to be a lot of opportunity there.
Yeah, I think, and one just quick tip I have for especially local investors too that are looking to get into, looking at these different neighborhoods, whether it's C or D or B or whatever they want to get into, like take advantage of just being actually here in this awesome city and being able to go out there and like drive it, go out there and look around and things. I know I'm a numbers guy, so I get kind of bogged down in like the analytics and the formulas of what's going on in different areas, but actually going out there and physically driving around, looking at what's going on, seeing like, oh, okay, this road or this street right here has 3 houses that are getting redone. Okay, I think this one down here, it looks like a good opportunity, or what's going on around us. So take advantage of that and go out there and actually drive around and check out the market.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. We only have about 30 seconds in this segment. I want to wrap it up and then go to the next segment after this. But I do the same thing. Sometimes when I'm driving around, I'm like, wow, there's some really interesting things going on here. Somebody with a lot of money spent some time and effort and energy to decide that they're going to do something here. So that might indicate something good for me,
and it's probably changed within the last year.
Yeah, and if I go to Twin Air and I see somebody putting $100,000 in a house, I'll typically just stop and talk to them. I say, "What's your thought process here? What's going on?"
That's great.
So I know what they're thinking is happening there.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's take another break, guys. Great discussion today. I wanted to wrap it up for the moment. Take a quick break, and we'll be back after this message.
This is Vicki Perry, Executive Director for the Central Indiana Real Estate Investors Association, known as CIREIA. People often ask me how to get started in real estate investing. What I tell them is to take this business in baby steps. There are dozens of ways to make money in real estate, so narrowing down the kind of business that is perfect for you takes time and effort. Step 1, come to the CIREIA meetings. We are the largest real estate investment club in the state and over 30 years old. With over 700 members, we have people at all levels of expertise, from beginners who have never done a deal to seasoned investors who do millions of dollars of transactions a year. Many of our members are happy to share their thoughts and tips for this business. We have 10 to 15 meetings every month teaching different parts of the business so you get one-on-one advice, information, education, collaboration. That's what we're all about. For more information, go to our website or give me a call at 317-670-8491. Step 2 next week.
Are you looking for advice on how to get started making money in real estate? Join us at the State REIA Real Estate Conference on January 12th here in Indy. With 5 national speakers plus a panel of regional experts, it's an all-day educational event. One price with no upselling. Go to Indiana State REIA, that's REIA.org, or call 317-670-8491. 670-8491. And welcome back to Real Talk. My name is Ron Watson, the president of the board of directors of CIREIA, and we've been having an interesting discussion today about the Investor's Guide to Grading Indianapolis Neighborhoods, which was published by Sterling White and on biggerpockets.com. Dave Short, Sterling Davis, and Brian Snyder have all been joining us today to talk about that. I wanted to go around the room. We don't have as much time in this last segment, so I wanted to give everyone's final thoughts on this particular report that we saw, and if you have anything you wanted to add to that. I also like you guys to give a tip of the week and let everybody know how they can contact you and learn more about what you're doing. So let's start with Brian.
Yeah, so I think just one last little thing about this article, just about the different areas and stuff, is if you are new or you're in this business and you just want to keep your own and stuff like that, one of the biggest things I'd say is that make sure that you know the zip codes and the area names of what just the city that you are investing in. So like in Indianapolis, I know each year they come out with a new map of all the different areas and things, and you can just like actually get on Amazon. We just ordered one for our office off Amazon. and stuff, but make sure you know the names and know the zip codes of what you want to invest in, just the different areas that are around town. If you have any questions or want to reach out to me at all, you can reach me at brian@simplewholesaling.com. So BRIAN at simplewholesaling.com. And we do education for new wholesalers looking to get into the business. Also, if you want to check out any of our properties that we're selling around Indy, we usually buy and sell about 25 to 30 properties. So we're always looking to sell our properties to you, or also looking for deals of our own. So let me know. Just my tip that I have for you this week is, as you are getting down to the end of the year, everybody always wants to start looking at their goals and what they want to accomplish for next year, and also reflecting on what they did this past year. And I know I was kind of looking through my goals just yesterday. Me and Brett Snodgrass were looking through our goals and stuff, and I was like, man, I started to just feel defeated, because I was like, man, I didn't accomplish this, I didn't do this as well as I thought I could. But then I really took some time to just kind of reflect on actually the progress I made in other parts of my life throughout this last year, and I was actually like, wow, I actually did accomplish a lot. So don't get too bogged down in what whether you accomplish your goals or not, but make sure you kind of reflect also on what you've accomplished as a whole for the year.
Thank you, Brian. It makes sense.
Yeah.
Sterling?
Yeah, so I think, this was a great discussion, guys. I really took a lot from it as well. I think in my world of looking at these different ideas, I think it's really about just having a plan and working your plan, So we deal a lot in those D and those C areas and some B, but each one of those hold a different strategy. So making sure that you understand that strategy and you work that plan throughout is how you get success. And so if you have any questions or anything, you can always hit me. You can call our office line at 888-212-3764. That's 888-212-EPMG. My tip of the week is about momentum. I think us as entrepreneurs and things like that have so much that goes on, and people look at us funny, and people always ask me, like, can you turn it off? If you answer that as no, then you're like me, you're an entrepreneur. And for that, I say always find clarity in everything that you do, and then you will have full momentum to be able to be successful in life. So keep on pushing. Thanks, Sterling. I appreciate that.
Well, I'm Dave Short. My best contact number is my email, dshort@c21sheets, SCHEETZ.com. My office, 317-705-2500, and they'll connect me. My tip in talking about these neighborhoods and things is that, if you're especially a newer investor and you get in these neighborhoods, investigate everything in the neighborhood. If I'm going into a neighborhood for the first time, I will go in 3 or 4 projects that's being completed and talk to the subcontractors, talk to the owners of these houses if they're there working. That's how I found out all the subsidies going on in certain areas in town, where I ran across a builder and I'm thinking, this is such a nice house in this area right now. So I stopped in. He said, I'm selling it to this organization. They give me the lot, and I'm selling this house to this organization for $200,000. And then I look at the sale of that house when it hit the MLS, and the sale was for $140,000. So there's a $60,000 subsidy that was involved in this house. So did it sell for $200,000 or did it sell for $140,000? The comp in that neighborhood is $140,000. So I know in any flips that I do, I can't exceed $140,000 as my in-sale price.
That's really good stuff, Dave, and I appreciate everybody joining us today on the panel. I wanted to make sure that everyone listening knows that each of our panelists are also available in our subgroups. There are subgroup leaders, and in CIREIA we have groups that meet on a weekly, monthly basis, and they're smaller groups, and they talk about their subject matter in a more intimate setting. So each of these gentlemen are available in those groups as well. My name is Ron Watson, president of the board of directors of CIREIA, and you can reach me at president@cireia.org, or stop by my restaurant at Trader's Mill Grill, 5650 West 86th Street. Have a tenderloin while you're out driving neighborhoods. And if you've missed previous episodes of CIREIA, you can listen to them on the CIREIA channel on YouTube, or go to cireia.org, which is CIREIA, and click on Saturday or Sunday on the calendar of events. The next monthly main meeting is our holiday extravaganza on December 6th, and this is our annual party where we feature our vendor members and sponsors. It's open to members only and an annual highlight of what's happening with CIREIA. In December, subgroups and new member orientations are canceled until January. And in January, we are relaunching the WIRE subgroup, which is Women in Real Estate, and we are launching a commercial investing subgroup. You can register for all of these events at www.cirea.org or call 317-670-8491. I want to thank everybody for listening today. Have a great week, and we hope to see you at one of our meetings very soon.